Good evening and welcome. I have the honor this evening of introducing the Master of Ceremonies. I've known him for quite some time. Many of you start your day with him every morning. He is an Emmy Award-winning meteorologist for the News Channel 5 network. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. 30 years anywhere is putting in quite a bit of time these days. He has been part of the nation's #1 rated morning newscast. He joined the station as a weather anchor for the weekend morning show, and currently he is now the senior meteorologist at the News Channel 5 network. He was born in Chicago and raised in Dyersburg, Tennessee. His interest in weather dates back to when he was in the 7th grade, and he loves to tell the story of having his own weather center in his backyard. Truth be told, it was probably a thermometer and a rain gauge on a stick. So that was his high-tech weather center. His TV career began in Knoxville, first at WTVF and then at WATE. He did a host of jobs at these stations, and he also worked with BET at that time as a freelance journalist. This isn't in the bio, but also at that time when he was in Knoxville at the University of Tennessee. Right, go Vols, go Vols. Probably one of his best accomplishments was meeting the love of his life. There we go. Which would be me, meeting the love of his life, because we were in the same dorm, and his floor had not had a water fountain for like a whole year. And so they did this big ceremony, and my floor was the sister floor, and we went to the water fountain opening. So we always joke that we met at the water fountain. Lelan has been honored with 9 regional Emmy Awards. He's been named Best Weather Anchor in the state 3 times by the Tennessee Associated Press, and in 2019, he was named National Broadcaster of the Year by the National Weather Association. He's been voted favorite weatherman, best dressed, and a plethora of things throughout his time here in Nashville. Lelan always loves to give back to the community. I tell people we are always at some type of event or some type of function. He serves on multiple boards, multiple community involvement activities, and is always there whenever his community needs him. So I now present to some and introduce to others my husband, Mr. Lelan Statom.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Dr. Yolanda Taylor Statom, who worked with Metro Nashville's schools for about 30 years and is now the Director of Teacher Education over at Trevecca Nazarene University. I walked out of the room we were in earlier and then walked back into the lobby, and she said, "You owe me." And I'm thinking, what does that mean? Now I know, because she was not scheduled to do the introduction until after we got here. But it is a pleasure to be here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That in itself deserves a big round of applause. It is an honor to be here from WTVF, the News Channel 5 network in Nashville, for this special evening and to serve as the ceremony for tonight's event. So we're going to go ahead and get right through it so that we are in honor of your time and also the fact that I've got a 2 a.m. wake-up call in the morning. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the president of the National Museum of African American Music, and our host tonight, C. Dion Brown.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Man, y'all look sharp. I swear, I wish I could get our crowds to dress like this. I'm just kidding. Anyway, my name is Dion Brown, the president and CEO of the National Museum of African American Music. On behalf of our board chair, Ms. Stacy Koju, our board members, our incredible staff, our volunteers, welcome to your museums. I just told this young man, it's an honor to be able to host this. It's really, man, y'all couldn't find a better picture, but anyway, hey, you know, it's crazy to come up behind Lelan. Lelan, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you very much. And I'll be brief, but I just want to say, you know, it's a lot of significance here. If God willing, the creek don't rise, if you're old enough to understand, I'll be 60 years old Sunday. So, yeah, whoever said praise God, you're right. So that means a lot. And I'm gonna make a crack at him now. You know, I heard his wonderful wife talk about his Emmy. Well, I'm an Emmy Award winner too. So I want that same. No, I really do. I hope this museum over the next year receive another one. Our education team and our curatorial is really working on something special, and we'll keep you up on that. But I really would like to thank, you know, the collaboration with this organization just ties into what this museum does. We work with the Turner Center, and I think it's the Turner Center in Western Tennessee, the prison. We go in there, we're creating a program, working with them. We work with Vanderbilt. We just have an incredible collaboration. So anybody in this room, if there's ever anything your museum can do for you, please reach out to myself or anybody on my staff. If there's something we can do, we'll do it. And tonight's celebration is just another perfect example of our commitment to this community, collaborations, particularly with organizations like the Tennessee Human Rights. And on behalf of the NAMAM staff, congratulations to you and all the hard work in that you do. Thank you.
Number one, happy birthday. Happy early birthday to you. I turned 60 in April, so welcome to the club. All right. And congrats on your Emmy as well. Also, if you have never been to the museum here, you've got to go. It doesn't remind me and my wife that we need to renew our membership, but we've been members here since the beginning. And it is a fantastic setup, a great legacy, not just for the history of music in the city and the state, but across the country as well. So President Brown, thank you so very much for inviting us and hosting us this evening. Right now, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, Muriel Nolen.
Good evening, everyone. Today, we gather to honor our past, celebrate our present, and safeguard our future as we honor the 60 years of education and enforcement of anti-discrimination laws by the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. Before we begin today, I would like to give a special thank you to our gold sponsors, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, Air Assault Team of Keller Williams, and Hallelujah Theater in Memphis. We would also like to thank all of the additional sponsors, vendors, and the National Museum of African American Music for such a nice facility. Also, our elected officials this evening that have joined us, if you could please just stand or wave for everyone. Thank you so much, and we're all honored that you're joining us today. For this occasion, our team aimed to give as many Tennesseans as possible free admission and online access to this program. And I think they've accomplished that goal with all of your support. At the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, we pride ourselves on our community relationships. Through education and enforcement, we advocate for the human rights of all Tennesseans. It is a distinct honor to stand before you this evening representing Tennessee on the exact day the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was enacted. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 played a pivotal role in advancing civil rights and ending racial segregation in the United States. It is one of the most significant civil rights laws in the United States history, and it was a major step in our struggle for racial equality and justice. Your presence here today signifies that you are a champion for human rights. You recognize that institutionalized bias and discrimination erode the foundation of our societies. By fighting for civil rights, you hope to tear down obstacles that impede chances for underprivileged people and maintain inequity regardless of skin color, gender, identity, or financial background. You aspire to build a world in which everyone can live and prosper. And for that, I thank each and every one of you, and give yourself a round of applause for being here and celebrating this moment. By honoring our past, we pay homage to the leaders of the civil rights movement tonight. Their fortitude in the face of hardship, their tenacity in opposing unfair legislation, their vision of a society in which equality is a reality rather than merely a pipe dream. They give us the will to keep fighting, to stand up to injustice, and to put forth endless effort to create a future that is more inclusive. Tonight, we celebrate the contributions of these individuals and the civil rights movement. Your presence serves as evidence of the effectiveness of group action, bravery, and unshakable dedication. Little by little, advancement has been made through public awareness, enforcement, and grassroots activism. Finally, as we look to safeguard our future, let us keep in mind that the fight for civil rights is a movement that will continue, and it calls for continued involvement. It is not limited to the pages of history. Whether we are promoting legislative changes, lending support to neighborhood associations, or teaching others and ourselves the value of equality, each of us has a part to play. As we reflect on our journey this evening, let's take a moment before we get started to honor those who came before us, paving the way for the rights we enjoy today. At this time, I'd like us to all observe a moment of silence in memory of James Lawson, a giant in the civil rights movement. Thank you all for being here this evening. Let's reaffirm our shared dedication to the values of justice, equality, and human dignity. Let's continue to carry forth the torch of equality and justice for all Tennesseans and individuals in this nation. I hope you enjoy the panel and the program this evening. And again, thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you, Director Nolen. Right now, we've got a special video highlighting the 60-year history of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission and the organization's significance in the state of Tennessee.
The start of this nation, we've always had differences and issues concerning civil rights. Our agency is important in Tennessee to make sure not only that we protect individuals when they have been wronged or treated unfairly, but to educate employers about what the laws are. Originally, we were the Tennessee Human Relations Commission. We got started in 1963. Our mission is to safeguard individuals from discrimination through education and enforcement. And here at the commission, we investigate employment discrimination claims, housing discrimination claims, as well as public accommodations.
When I was at the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, I began there as an executive assistant. So I would do things like support the Board of Commissioners, support the executive director and his staff, all those things, help with the cases that were coming in. And then I moved into the position of Human Resources Director. I got a firsthand look at employment applications that were coded, and some of them would have like 40 plus. You can't discriminate against people over the age of 40, so would have that, or would have WF for white female, or BM for black male, things like that. And so I had an opportunity to see how it really worked, and then to tie that to the work that the investigators were doing and, the mission of the commission.
I worked for the election of Governor Winfield Dunn. And I think in appreciation, I was a patronage appointment to the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. I think I was the only person that gave him an event that was racially integrated, so he probably thought I might be a good candidate for the commission. I was so flattered to get to do this, and it was very exciting for me. We had a director at the time named Cornelius Jones, and he explained to me when I got on that our mission was to try and help eliminate job discrimination. And I said, how does it work? And he said, well, we use persuasion. And I learned that all the states in the union except 9 had laws. New York had an anti-discrimination law against employment as early as 1945. In 1964 was when the federal government had the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Title VII of that act dealt with employment. So I quickly learned that we need a law. If we're an agency and we're using persuasion as a method of trying to get fair employment practices, that wasn't going to be terribly effective.
I worked for still work for the Tennessee AFL-CIO. A lot of issues that come up in the unions with discrimination and so forth. So I wanted to expand my knowledge into that field on how to resolve some of these issues. And if we couldn't resolve it through a grievance procedure, what was the next step? And so the Human Rights Commission allowed me to be able to help those individuals to go to another area.
1978, we became an enforcement agency. And so now we have the power similar to federal agencies of HUD and the EEOC to actually investigate and bring appropriate litigation whenever there's evidence that there is discrimination has occurred.
Housing always was a big issue. There was always cases with discrimination in housing and people being put out because of dogs or whatever the case may be. So I thought those cases were very interesting. The the staff did a great job of resolving those and coming to a conclusion.
Individuals or families would try to go rent an apartment or maybe rent a house that somebody had on the market, and how they would face these challenges, being told that it's not available when it is available. Maybe, and it could be something as simple as, they weren't married, or it could be something like they were a couple, but they weren't of the same race. It could be something like that. It was a number of things. So those were the issues I was exposed to. And again, it helped me to realize that these things were happening, but more than that, I began to think, how can I make an impact in this small place, in this big world, but this small agency, this small commission? How can I learn this stuff and realize what's happening and help in the way that I was hired to help?
Being able to work with the staff, that was the biggest gift to me. To be able to call them up and say, hey, what's going on? Just daily talking with them and see how well they work together.
We started as of a staff, I believe, of 2 or 3 individuals. We have grown tremendously. We could probably use twice as much staff. We are an agency now of 33 individuals across the state.
I would love to see the commission expanded, get bigger. It didn't have a lot of different coverages in the area, and in particular the rural areas. I think that a lot of times in the rural areas, people don't always hear about the commission. And I think that if we can expand and get into some of the other counties besides the major counties, we would be really welcome.
In the next 60 years, I still see this commission here and relevant. As long as we have a Civil Rights Act, we have a nation, we will have a need for this agency and agencies like this.
I hope to see more interest and people knowing that it's one commission out of many. There are a lot of things happening here in Nashville and in Tennessee that are important, but this one is important because it has the potential to impact everybody. Some people are oblivious, to discriminatory practices because they just haven't experienced it. But because of how we're made and how things have changed so much, I hope no one ever experiences, but there's so many ways you can experience it directly or indirectly that I think is important.
We are the only state agency that actually has enforcement powers when it comes to housing discrimination and employment discrimination complaints. I would like for our agency to be at the forefront of whatever the problems are, kind of before it becomes an issue in the state. I want us to continue to train, become knowledgeable, informed about what's going on in the nation so that we can be ready to assist citizens.
What a powerful reminder of the great work that the Tennessee Human Rights Commission has performed over the last 60 years, but also, as they said in that video, setting out kind of a roadmap for the future on things that need to be done, even in today's world, and also to have an impact not just on the metro areas, but on all 95 counties across the great state of Tennessee. At this time, I would like to introduce the presenters of the Wurzburg Award, Tennessee Human Rights Commission Board Chair Darius Upton and former Commissioner Jocelyn D. Wurzburg, whose legacy we honor with this award.
So when I met Cornelius Jones, he decided that I should go to a convention in San Francisco called IORA, International Association of Human Rights Agencies. And I was telling some people there that Tennessee needed a law, because we don't have one. And all of a sudden, that became of interest to people, mainly because how the first state of the Southeast Football Conference went, they were afraid the other states would follow it. And I got tremendous help. NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee Against Discrimination. It was just remarkable. They were very interested that the first Southern state have a really good law. Kentucky helped tremendously. They had a good law, but they had problems, and they didn't want me to make the same mistake. So I took this law finally over to Senator Avon Williams. And I was ushered into his office, and I stood there. He didn't offer me a seat. He did not get up. And he said, yes. And I said, Senator Williams, I'm interested in your being the sponsor of our legislation. He said, what's it about? I says, if it passes, it'll be the first anti-discrimination law in employment and public accommodations. And he said to me, Ms. Wurzburg, where were you when I wrote my law? And I said, playing bridge at the country club. You could see smoke come out of his ears. He picks up a dictaphone and he says, letter please to Mr. William Robinson, Lawyers Committee Against Discrimination, Washington, D.C. Dear Bill, please review the legislation and get back to me. And he said, I'll get back with you, Ms. Wurzburg. I said, thank you. And I left. About a week later, he called me up and he said, Mrs. Wurzburg, why didn't you tell me Bill Robinson helped you write the legislation? I said, Mr. Williams, I was so afraid of you, I wasn't going to say another word. Well, I do want to tell you that writing the bill inspired me to go to law school. And after I was in law school, I got a phone call in 78, I think it was. And Mr. Williams said, Mrs. Wurzburg, I'm calling to tell you that your legislation has passed the Tennessee legislature. And I said, oh, Senator Williams, I am so excited. I am so sorry I wasn't in the gallery to watch you debate the bill. He said, Mrs. Wurzburg, there was no debate. I traded it for a trucking weight bill. But I later got appointed by Governor Bredesen to serve again on the commission. And I was thrilled under Beverly Watts's regime. The commission functioned as a good enforcement agency, and it was so much fun getting to being on a commission to help enforce a law that I had written back in early 1971. So thank you all for being here today. Congratulations on the commission. I'm so proud of y'all, and this is a great anniversary.
Good evening. I'm struggling with how to actually follow that. But all I can think of to say really is thank you. Thank you so much for being the person that opened the door for so many, who blazed the trail, who has taught us what it takes in a lot of ways to do things and how to work for others so that all of us have an example. And we continue to push forward to help other Tennesseans live freely as they are as a commission because of your work. And it
was a we.
It's always a we, right? But that's why we have this award, because it means so much, and it means so much. Your work means so much to us, and it's really an honor to award this. I want to thank our committee that went through a lot of candidates to arrive at one, because our commissioners found so many good people working through the state in every corner. They may not be on a commission board or in state government or whatever, but they're working really hard to make sure their neighbors have the freedoms and continue to have those every day. And so thank you to our committee for going through that process. We arrived at a winner, and we're excited about that. She comes from Columbia, South America originally, coming to the East Tennessee side, which makes me very happy because she and I share a Knoxville home. And on a side note, in 2019, when she was working with Mayor Kincannon's office, she was one of the first people to welcome me as I was part of Knox County government. And she has continued to work in our community for the advancement of our Hispanic and Latino community in so many different ways. She's always had a big heart, and it was so apparent to me in our conversations through the years in the city-county building. It has been such a pleasure for me personally to watch her work and see the things she's done, being involved in so many different organizations, our Hispanic Chamber, and the list goes on. Currently working in our school system as a liaison for those families that need assistance the most. It is really a pleasure for me personally to present this 2024 Jocelyn D. Wurzburg Civil Rights Legacy Award to Patricia Inés Robledo.
Thank you so much. Sorry. What an honor. I am going to put this down. I was warned it was heavy, and it is heavy. Thank you so much for this prestigious award. When my family and I flew from the Andes Mountains of Colombia to the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee in 1981, I was 17 years old. Now, at the age of 60, go 60, right? I find it so significant to receive this award as the Commission and the Civil Rights Act celebrates their 60th anniversary. I am honored to accept these, and I do so with my parents in mind. I was lucky to have grown up in a household where social justice and community service were like daily bread. My parents were not afraid to get into the good kind of trouble when standing up for justice. I could share so many examples, but I will just mention one. My dad was an industrial engineer who traveled to the West Indies setting up factories for an international garment company. He was outspoken against unjust and unsafe practices in what were basically sweatshops. He put his career on the line, which changed its path, which eventually led to seeking opportunities in the U.S. I thank my parents for their bravery to immigrate, to start over again. They came here with 4 daughters and very few possessions. What they did not leave behind was their sense of social justice and service to others, and practiced it until the end. I am inspired by tonight's theme, so I'm honoring my past, celebrating with much gratitude this prestigious award right now, and remaining committed to safeguarding my parents' legacy for more equitable and inclusive communities wherever I am. When I first arrived in the U.S. with limited English proficiency and still translating literally everything, one of the first questions somebody asked me was whether I was here for good. I have to confess I was really upset that somebody would think I was here for bad. So I thank you. That 17-year-old thanks you. This 60-year-old thanks you for recognizing that I am here for good. I wish all of you a happy 4th of July. My family's story reflects what is possible in this country. May each of us continue to do our part to make this U.S. American dream possible for all. I am grateful for the important work done by the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, and I'm so grateful. Gracias. Buenas noches.
Congratulations on the award and your journey here, and great to see a living history among us as well. So right now, as they're working to get the stage set, we're getting ready right now to welcome our panel moderator. Dr. Russ Wigginton is the president of the National Civil Rights Museum, a role that he assumed in August of 2021. His career spans education, fundraising, operations, and community engagement. Prior to his current position, Dr. Wigginton served as the Chief Post-Secondary Impact Officer for Tennessee SCORE and held various leadership roles at Rhodes College from 2006 to 2019. Among those roles were Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students. As a historian, Dr. Wigginton has taught African American and community history at Rhodes College for 8 years. He authored The Strange Career of the Black Athlete, African American in Sports, and has published articles on African American social and labor history. Dr. Wigginton has served on numerous civic boards, including the National Civil Rights Museum, Memphis Zoo, and the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis. He holds a BA in History from Rhodes College and a PhD in History from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So please welcome our moderator for the evening, Dr. Russ Wigginton.
Thank you so much, and it's a joy to be with you all this evening. I'm going to ask our panelists to join me, and while they are doing that, I'm going to talk about Jocelyn Wurzburg. No, I could talk about Jocelyn Wurzburg, an amazing individual who's done so much in our state, and when you live in Memphis and have the joy of knowing her, it is a tribute to be here with her. No, it does not matter where you sit. Thank you all. And I'm going to allow each person to introduce themselves. We're going to have a conversation, folks, and we are here with some outstanding individuals from across the state who are going to impart some wisdom, maybe even a challenge or two, to make us all understand where we've been, where we are, and certainly where we need to go. So I'll just allow each person to give a brief introduction, and then I'll start asking questions.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Debra House, and I'm the Executive Director of Legal Aid of East Tennessee. We're a nonprofit law firm over in the east part of the state with offices out in Chattanooga up to the Tri-Cities, and we help low-income and other disenfranchised individuals navigate the justice system.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Clifton Harris, and I'm the President and CEO of the Urban League of Middle Tennessee. The Urban League is one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country, where we have over 93 affiliates across the country. And we've been serving the Middle Tennessee area for over 56 years here in the Nashville area.
My name is Jack Derryberry. I'm a lawyer with Disability Rights Tennessee. We are the protection and advocacy agency for persons with disabilities in Tennessee, and we are charged by our statutes that we operate under to provide legal, administrative, and other remedies to persons with disabilities. And I've been doing this being a lawyer for a long time. All these spring chickens that said they were 60, I'm 77. So, but that said, I think that there's a lot that we can learn from what has gone before and what we can propose to do in the future. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Roshun Austin, President and CEO of The Works Incorporated. We're a community development corporation operating mostly in the Memphis region. We don't just do it in Memphis, and I think Dr. Wigginton was talking about me when he said challenge, because I do like to challenge people. Our organization is the developer of affordable housing, and we work in disinvested neighborhoods, but I like to say we work at the intersection of affordable housing, environment and climate health, and public health. And so we're in the food space, the policy space. We have a team of lawyers. We're not a law firm. We just play one.
Thank you, all four of you all, for those great introductions. As Executive Director Nolen said in the very inspiring piece to get us started, and has been captured throughout the spirit of this evening, I couldn't help but be reminded of what Coretta Scott King said when she was talking about how we needed to continue on after her husband was assassinated on the balcony of where I work every day. And she talked about every generation has to earn and fight for its freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need to pretend like that was not a true statement. So we've got to earn and fight for our freedom. Ladies and gentlemen on this stage, tell us how you do that every single day in your work, and tell us what the biggest challenges are that prohibit you from doing that to the best of your ability. Ms. House.
That's a lot to ponder. Every day we fight for low-income East Tennesseans. We fight for people who are being discriminated against in the housing arena, in family issues, for victims of violence, and public benefits. And our mission is in East Tennessee, where justice is a community value and no one faces a legal problem alone. So our focus is on justice and how we bring justice to those who cannot otherwise afford it, because we are focused on low-income people. Challenges are great. Every day we face challenges within our local community, oppression of individuals. One of the biggest issues, I actually polled my staff before I came over here about what they were seeing, because they're boots on the ground. One of the biggest issues we see is housing, affordable housing, fair housing, and we fight for those people every day. We've expanded our housing work greatly in the past few years, particularly since COVID. COVID was a great challenge. So really just helping people navigate and the barriers that they face and helping them overcome the barriers really is what we're all about.
Thank you for that. Mr. Harris?
Yeah, so the Urban League now fights every day on 3 fronts. The first one is to defend democracy, to make sure that people are registered, not only registered to vote, but people get out to vote, because you can't, fight against the measures that hold back our communities and our neighborhoods, and you can't vote people extremists out of office if you are not registered to vote. So that is one area that we fight on a daily basis. The second area that we fight on is to demand diversity, to make sure that we have access to economic self-reliance for people who are looking for career opportunities, and get away from the stereotypes and all of Black jobs. So yeah. We fight
Young
real
will
hard
be proud,
against
Mr.
that.
Harris.
We fight real hard against that. And then finally, to defeat poverty. There's been a war on poverty ever since I was a kid. And minimum wage is not going to do it. So we got to get people not only to livable wage jobs, but we also have to show people how to build generational wealth.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Mr. Derryberry.
Thank you. Disability Rights Tennessee has a fairly broad range of activities for persons with disabilities. We have the Protection and Advocacy and Voting Act, and we do a lot of surveys of handicap accessibility at voting facilities. We do a lot of work on employment, persons being discriminated against by employers in the job application process or in the work environment. We do a great deal of public policy work and trying to educate legislators about some of the bills that they're considering in the legislature each year. And finally, we sue people. And we have 2 ongoing cases involving persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, one against the Department of Corrections and another one against the Departments of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities and Mental Health. We recently filed litigation against the state and Department of Children's Services and Education relative to the treatment of young folks who are in the custody of the Tennessee Department of Children's Services by reasons of delinquency. Thank you. My boss will be glad to hear that I got all that applause. But I think that what we see 30 years ago, I was an attorney in private practice doing legal aid work out at what was then the Woodland Hills Youth Development Center. And it's closed now. The state proposes to reopen it. I'm not exactly sure why, but they think they need it. Anyway, when I was there in that facility of 144 young people, approximately 80% of those youth were African American, and approximately 85% of them had DSM diagnoses and took psychotropic medication. So we are particularly concerned about the intersection of disability and race and how discrimination is practiced. And the statistics I just mentioned to you occurred 30 years ago when Disability Rights Tennessee started looking at the Wilder Youth Development Center 3 years ago. We found almost 90% of the youth were African American, and 80 or 90% of them had disabilities and were diagnosed and taking psychotropic medication. This at the same time that the American Bar Association says you shouldn't be giving psychotropic medication to youth at all because it's off-label, it's not approved, it's not studied, and it has a lot of adverse consequences to youth who are in the developmental years. So we have just filed that case, and we'll be seeing how that goes. But we do both policy, education, trying to work with people on employment things, voting, and then litigation that we're not able to solve it.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Okay,
so what do
troublemaker. I mean, Miss Austin.
I am a troublemaker. So what do I do every day? Probably turn over a lot of chairs, as I mentioned to Clifton. uh, so I say to describe the work that I do and the challenges around it, it's dismantling systems. And most of my work is in the built environment. So I mentioned housing, but I'm also involved in pedestrian and cycling infrastructure and how we built our spaces. And what do I mean by dismantling systems that are meant to harm us, really? Because humans, the most basic needs for humans are revolve around food and shelter. So we must shelter from the elements. Even if we go back and you believe in cavemen, they went in caves. And then we must have food and water to sustain us. And so our systems in this country were built as impediments for many of us. And just to talk about housing, because I'm an affordable housing developer, um, that's the base of my work. And our housing system is a financial model. My partner in business and development, his father was a civil rights attorney. A.W. Willis the third is who I work with. Archie is what we call him. And he mentioned we were on a panel together, and we talk about this often. Our housing system was set up as a financial model. So that means the secondary market came to be after the Great Depression. That means Wall Street got involved. And so if the way we create affordable housing, 80% of affordable housing in this country is created using something called the low income housing tax credit. The last two words should indicate something to you, tax credit. And so who is it to benefit? Some type of investor. And so if we don't dismantle the system of creating affordable housing as a tax credit, it was never meant to really benefit the beneficiaries that I work with and serve every day. And so that's what I mean by dismantling systems. And some of those systems are local and state policies that do not allow us to do things by right. And so people will often hear me say, I like to undo. It's the undoing of the interstate highways that split our neighborhoods. That means we need to tear them down. We can't, they still separate us. And some of them, in their places in Memphis and probably across the country in urban centers, where there are ramps to nowhere. And we're the perfect example of that because of our interstate stopped at Overton Park in my now neighborhood. I moved to Evergreen. And it benefited from the stop at going through the park, but the neighborhoods nearby did not benefit from that. And so other policies in zoning, there are just as racist. Foundationally, they were written as exclusionary and racist. We don't do restrictive deeds the same way, but I could still find them about colored subdivisions or who couldn't live where. And we just kind of glossed over the fact that those things were still on the books. Unless we destroy them, they're still there. They're the foundation of what we're still facing as challenges in housing discrimination with neighborhoods that are split. Well, guess what? The retailers also don't place. And so I'm in the food business, got in the food business 14 years ago because residents were asking about access to food. And just to give you an example of how that impacts people and a challenge, the zip code where our organization was started by the former pastor of an AME church, 38106 in Memphis, has the lowest life expectancy in our county. And 13 miles away in a more affluent suburban zip code, if you compare them, the difference is 19 years. And so you lose 2 decades off of your life, and much of it is diet related. And so if a retail model for groceries says that they're going to look for density, and they're going to look for major corridors. And so that's why I talk about the built environment a lot, because we need to build a neighborhood or build neighborhoods where all people can live and have access to everything that they need. And so I have tons of challenges. I'm always challenging the Memphis City Council. I'll come up here and I'll challenge state legislators. I'll go to Washington and challenge, because until we change housing laws and how we deal with zoning policy at a local level, we will always have challenges.
Thank you so much for that. Each of you touched on some through your own particular way, some common themes, and I do want to connect to the moment of silence we had to Reverend Lawson, and he reminded me of the work that he did with young people, college students for the most part, young people at a beautiful age of, you know enough to be dangerous, you're courageous, and beautifully naive to think you can dismantle. Isn't that powerful? Don't you wish you could be beautifully naive again? Well, sometimes, maybe not all the time. But Reverend Lawson was masterful at that. He was also masterful at strategy. I'm not sure we ever talk enough about strategy. Everybody up here, your first response to a question that I was trying to provoke you, while you may have had a little emotion in your voice, you went to strategy. I would love for you to speak to strategy. How do you determine, decide, and discern what your strategy is going to be in much of your work and important issues? Do you follow the style of Reverend Lawson? Or dare I say some other provocative individuals? What is your strategy when you go about the work that you do? These are like final exam questions. They're smart people, though. They can handle.
So
We'll start with Mr. Harris. Yes,
okay.
please.
So for the Urban League, for us, we started with a strategy around economic development, right? And we specifically focused in on real estate development. And we asked how many Black real estate developers are there in our city? And it was not even a handful, right? And so we put together a program called Real Estate Developers Academy that took 11 people of color, 7 men, 4 women, and put them into a master's level class over 18 months and taught them how to be successful real estate developers. And we gave them access to all the tools that they needed, from financial models, business law models, community engagement, initiatives. And for 18 months, we paired them with successful real estate developers. And tax credits were mentioned earlier. And we taught them how to put together a capital stack and what that word meant, and how to use it for what projects to produce housing. And we started with the premise of housing as opposed to affordable housing, because there's no such thing as affordable housing. You have either, if you don't have the income to buy the house that you can afford, right, then you need income. So all of this is tied together. And so now those 11 developers now have over 640 units of housing in the market to serve people at 80 to 30% of area median income, and over 200 million worth of real estate development going on right now in our city, which is a game changer.
Are y'all clapping yet?
Right.
That is amazing. What's the time frame again?
18 months. And now we have selected our second cohort of 12 individuals that are going through 18 months of training. And now the National Urban League is asking us to bring this model across the country, because rather than having non-BIPOC developers come in and develop our neighborhoods, we know how to develop our neighborhoods. We know what we want in our neighborhoods, and we have the wherewithal to do that. And so that was the strategy that we used. It is an economic accelerator, it is an economic engine, and it is also a workforce accelerator.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Go ahead. No order.
Oh, okay.
Go
The
ahead.
first thing I thought about, I have a lot of different strategies. And so I was thinking about, the director was talking about enforcement. And so I hang out with like Tennessee Human Rights Commission or the National Fair Housing Alliance. I like people that do enforcement action. And I was meeting, I have a 17-year-old who's following behind me this summer. She is really interested in city and regional planning. And I was intrigued that she knew that she was interested in city and regional planning, and she's 17. And so she's really into it too. And so she was sitting with me in a meeting with a bank that is coming under consent order. And the bankers came in and they always tell you what they want you to do. And I'm just sitting back at this point saying, yeah, really? I'm not trying to date you. And so I told the banker, and he was stunned. I said, I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to banks, and I'm polyamorous, and I really like bad boys. And so here's what I need for you to do. Since you're under consent order, I'm not. So I use that strategy with banks. Or if I walk into one of the largest banks in the state of Tennessee and the president's sitting there, and I just happen to be with his largest depositor, who is one of my top donors. And he said, what do you all want? And I'm like, you don't need to talk, I'll talk. I said, I like 50 million. And he said, who is she? I said, well, I heard my donor had been talking to Jamie Dimon, who's the president of Chase, and he takes deposits too. And so it just depends on who I'm in the room with. I went to college and I'm from Memphis, and I grew up in high poverty, in a disinvested neighborhood, had all of everything wrong with it. And I still have some naivete. Clifton and I were talking because I followed him. I was 24 years old, and those people in Orange Mound hired me as their executive director. I'm like, I don't know anything, but they hired me.
You learn quick.
I learned quickly and so my strategies depend. So if it's a banker, I know what they want. So not only do they want deposits to sweep every night, they like loan relationships, and I understand CRA better than some of their CRA officers around the test. And so I know what they need from me. And so if it's a builder, and I really like that program, we have something similar where we are investing in small developers, Black developers and women developers in Memphis, trying to give them a leg up. And I'm taking them with me. Hey, this is what they're talking about with a capital stack. I learned, and I hung out with the carpenters local. I hung out with people that taught me things. And I always listen to them early on, not so much anymore, but because I think I know a little bit more. And so it depends. And if it's a strategy with the people that we serve every day, it's different about how I deal with people that I'm trying to assist. And so I say with our renters, and we have homeowners, or I did start a mortgage loan fund. If they don't do what I want them to do and I need access to mortgages for individuals in certain neighborhoods, I just start it and say, you need to put money in it. Or if it's a renter, I try to build a good renter. So how do I address the impediments and the barriers in their lives to make it easier for them? And so it varies.
Yeah, that versatility and flexibility. Mr. Derryberry, did you have anything to?
Well, we're talking about strategy. And, if you're a lawyer and you're thinking about strategy, then you're thinking about some sort of lawsuit or some sort of policy work. Fundamental to that is getting your facts right, doing a whole lot of factual investigation. I think you do a lot of investigation with the people that you work with in business, and you do too. And so you have to get your facts right. You have to know every single little itty bitty thing that's going on about the people that you're dealing with. And then when you start talking about policy work with the legislature or trying to influence a federal agency, or if you're talking about a lawsuit, you have to be willing to be there as long as the other side is there plus 1 day. And you have to realize that you cannot give up, because I'm sure everybody in this room has been in situations where they were advocating for some initiative or thing they were trying to do, and the other side just wanted to wait them out. Yes, ma'am, that's a nice idea. Let me think about that, So, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was involved in the litigation about Arlington Developmental Center in Memphis, and then about Clover Bottom and Green Valley in Middle and East Tennessee. The filing of those lawsuits and then the dates on which facilities actually ended up closing and everybody had moved out into community programs where they could get with their families, that sort of thing. Average, give or take, 20 years. So you've got to, if you're going to do this kind of work, I think whether it's policy or it's economic development or it's litigation, you've got to be willing to commit decades to it and not walk away, because people will try to wait you out. They think you will go away. They think you will get tired. They think you will slow down. They think you will give up. And so willingness to be in it for the long term. I'm going to, whoever the person you're trying to deal with is, I'll be here just as long as you are, plus a little bit more.
Thank you, sir. Ms. House.
Thank you. I was thinking about strategy in the legal context, and Jack talked about the facts. Absolutely right. And one of the strategies that we employ that is so challenging is to try to look ahead and anticipate what is going to come next for our clients, because we never know. We never know if there's going to be a natural disaster. We never know if there's going to be a pandemic. We never know if the law is going to change, if the housing laws are going to change, if the domestic violence laws are going to change, and how we respond to that. And that is a really huge challenge, because we don't know. We're looking at things right now, something called predictive analytics, if anybody has ever heard of that, taking data sets, data lakes, and using them to predict based on the past what is going to happen in the future, so we can be positioned to respond to that. And then allocating resources appropriately to respond to what the issue of the moment is, because when I get to the office tomorrow, it might be something totally different than what my staff was dealing with today. And also the challenge of predicting in our urban areas, Chattanooga, Knoxville, even the Tri-Cities, as opposed to our rural areas. We're very much a Southern Appalachia region in East Tennessee. We have a lot of very isolated people geographically, socially, and otherwise. And how do you anticipate their needs, and how do you reach them? If there is something, how do you reach them? That's a big challenge as well.
Thank you. I'm listening for themes, and you all just keep putting them out there. This notion, I asked about strategy, and you all capture some key characteristics that I just want to mention and reference back to see if they were applicable 60 years ago, and maybe they might be applicable 60 years from now. Every one of you in your response spoke to some dimension, some aspect of resiliency, some notion of hope and possibility. And what you didn't say, but I picked up on, was what you didn't say explicitly, but I feel like I picked up on, was this idea of passion and commitment to humanity. And then I thought about predictive analytics that Jocelyn Wurzburg practiced. She didn't call it that, but that's what she was doing when she talked about the work that led to the establishment of the work of this organization. How do you capture over the last 60 years the importance of those themes? How do you capture that and situate that in our society today, where it's noisy, and make it matter so that we can continue on this journey of progress and civility and decency and human rights? How do you do that?
You got to keep talking about it. You got to keep it front and center no matter what you're doing every step of the way, and you can't let people shut you down. You talk about whatever it might be in the civil rights context, housing, the issues our clients face, and people don't want to hear it. And you got to keep talking about it. I think that's how you honor the past and continue into the future, is you got to keep talking about it, be passionate about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's rooted in the Lord that I serve. He called me for a purpose. And even when I got called to the ministry, it was very clear that the Lord was not going to give me a church, but he was going to give me a ministry. And he began early on showing me that ministry when my grandfather would ride up and down Evans Road on his tractor, and he would leave bushel baskets of food and vegetables on people's porch. And I used to ride the tractor with him and Lucy, which is his little dog, and help him sometime. And my grandfather sold off part of his 300-acre farm to Black people so that they can have homesteads. Then he decided that he'd build a school and a church. And when integration came, they bought the school from him, and then there was a big debate of what they wanted to call the school, whether they were going to call it Clyde Evans or whatever. And he said, I don't give a damn what you call it as long as you pay me my money. And so he was a very shrewd businessman also, but he was always fair. And so every morning I wake up, I'm not that smart. I tell people that all the time. I just wake up every morning and ask the Holy Spirit, how can I help you today?
All right. Thank you.
I will echo that to an extent. I'm on the mission committee at our church, and I think a whole lot about Matthew 25 and what we're called to do. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you comforted me. And I think that's what we do. And I think that also we need to, one of the foundational principles or processes is expand the group, expand the tent. You know, you don't win these fights by being by yourself out there, being a lone voice in the wilderness. You win these fights by getting friends and people of influence and people that can make decisions or influence decisions until you get a bigger group than the other folks have. And so I think expanding the tent or big tent methodology is important. I think we also need to be very, very, very aware, and I don't want to sound like, a paranoid old fool too much, but artificial intelligence scares me. Algorithms in finance and healthcare scare me because I don't know who designed them, how they designed them, and what the formula is. So I think we need to think about both, human relations sorts of things, expanding the tent, but also think about the really hidden ways in which decisions are made, whether it's with algorithms or artificial intelligence. I use Google sometimes, and so I type some question in Google. First thing that pops up, it says, Google AI suggests you do this. Really? Now who designed Google AI, and what are the parameters and the guidelines of that program, that algorithm. So I think that both the hidden things that influence decisions and then expanding the tent and making sure we get as big a group involved as possible. I mean, what I talked to you about at the start, the intersection of disability and race and how persons who are both disabled and of a race which is a statistical minority, those two things together, I mean, they've got two strikes right there. I can't tell you how many young men, young women I've talked to in juvenile justice facilities, and you look at them and you can see that the light is on in their eyes, but just barely, because they have been beat down for years and years and years. And so I think we have to be, on top of everything else, sensitive to that and alert to that and working on trying to rectify it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so similar personally, although I guess I am called to ministry, probably the Peter ear cutting version, but but you will hear me always use the motto.
Boy, I can't take her anywhere. I'll tell you.
Rebuild, restore, renew, which comes from is our motto of our organization, which comes from the book of Isaiah. But personally, people will hear me often say, "And the second is like unto it, that we should love our neighbors as ourselves." So that's the personal side of continuing this. But the unfortunate reality today that many of the things, the protected things or the things we were fighting for in terms of human rights. So I think about housing. Private equity firms have scooped up whole neighborhoods. And so more people are facing the challenges in finding adequate quality housing that is affordable to them. And so you've expanded that group of people. You've also expanded hunger among seniors and children. And so access to food has become an issue for more than just the lowest of the low income. And so we're all facing that when we go to the grocery stores, the cost of food. Underemployment is impacting larger groups of people. And then I think about health and our access to food as it relates to that. And the closing of hospitals systems in rural areas, or no grocery store 30 miles from a county, and then no access to transportation. And so I think all of those things are expanding. And then the thing that people don't talk about most is climate change. It impacts every class. And we don't talk about it enough. And fight. It used to be a small group of people we used to call tree huggers. And so now I have become one of them. And I am very concerned about how we've treated our planet and what it's led to, the urban heat island effect and how it's impacting our health. Not just in the urban, but you would think that rural parts of Tennessee were not experiencing some of the things, but there's more flooding. There are more storms. There's more destruction in towns and cities throughout the U.S. And in the South is being hit. It's hot. It's very hot. It was 60 something this morning. When I walked the dog here, it's over 90. And it doesn't matter where you're standing. And so it's hotter. And so we need to be very concerned about the environment. But I'm just suggesting a lot of the things that we've been fighting for the last 60 years, they're amplified and more people are impacted by whether it's discrimination in housing, access to other things like food and health.
Great. Thank you so much. And final question, it's going to be unfair, but you got to stick to it. A closing thought on the importance of this organization. Closing thought on the importance of this organization that we are celebrating tonight and their amazing work. Closing thought.
Well, I think a lot of the work that we do in this space relates directly to the Human Rights Commission. because that's what it's all about for our clients is equality and justice. And I heard reference to justice several times tonight. And the Human Rights Commission ties so directly to that. And we work with them. We work together with them, particularly in the housing space and the disability space. So
That's a good question. But I would say thank you for the work that you do, the work that you've done, and the work that you're going to do. And I hope that you would take a real keen interest in healthcare. There's no reason why the state of Tennessee should not expand Medicaid. It's a moral issue.
Thank you.
Or moral imperative, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what the Tennessee Human Rights Commission allows us to do is expand the tent, work with persons who are like-minded, trying to do similar sorts of goals. And, you know, you lift one person up, everybody gets lifted up. And we have to keep doing that one individual at a time or one large effort at a time. And I also think everybody has talked about being aware of the world in which we operate right now. You mentioned climate change. I've got my niece is a biologist at UT, and she and her husband are both biologists. They used to be at Tulane. The state of Louisiana loses one football field a day to rising oceans. They saw the street that they lived on being flooded during the hurricane. To tell a story, there's a military position called CINCPAC, Commander-in-Chief Pacific, and the Commander-in-Chief Pacific was called to Boston to speak about the greatest strategic threats that the United States faces. And he said, the greatest one is when migrations that are induced by climate change start and people start moving. And then the question will be, are you able to move? Can you afford it? Do you have the resources? Do you have the skills? Do you have the connections? That sort of thing. So we've got to continue as a group to make alliances amongst ourselves and to push for those programs and those policies, such as expansion of Medicaid, that lifts everybody up. One person gets better health care, everybody gets better health care. You know, I think at the risk of saying something my boss may ask me, why did you do that? I would say, why exactly is it that we walk away from over $1 billion a year in federal financial participation and expanded Medicaid? Why do we do that? Yeah.
So, Ms. Austin, we've got 1 minute, so you get the final word.
I'll be really quick. This commission must continue to exist. I mean, we must amplify its work until human beings decide that they want other human beings to have the benefits of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking our wonderful panelists. And to the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, thank you for all that you've done and are doing and will continue to do. It's been an honor to be a part of this celebration. Thank you. No.
If you will give the panelists another big round of applause. Definitely a great and insightful discussion, and one real-world example of climate change. If you've been paying attention to tropical weather, we had a hurricane, the first Category 4 hurricane in the month of June in Beryl, and Beryl went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in just a matter of hours. And so the earliest that we've ever had a Category 5 hurricane due to the record warmth of the ocean right now. So real world discussion, real world topic. So again, we thank the panelists, but right now I would like to invite the Tennessee Human Rights Commission Executive Director Muriel Nolen back for some closing comments.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you again to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, Air Assault Team of Keller Williams and Hallelujah Theater, and all of our event sponsors. Thank you as well to our vendors, 353 Media, UKNO Catering, DJ Smoke, and the National Museum of African American Museum. I'd also like to thank our federal partners from the EEOC and HUD who have driven across the state to support us this evening, and also the planning committee. If you guys are here, I would like for you to just stand and or wave and let everyone. Also, guys, if you could just indulge me for one moment, it is not an easy assignment to lead this independent, neutral state agency that is responsible for enforcement of employers, other state agencies, and businesses across this state. However, and I take every opportunity I can to recognize my team who. I told them, I think, 6-9 months ago, I want this to be a festive occasion, just to celebrate the hard work we've done over the last several years. And I told Jacob, is Jacob here? He's our communications director. We attended the Freedom Awards. And I told him I want what Dr. Wigginton had, but just on low budget. So I think he got close with our donated funds. So thank you, Jacob. And if all of my staff, we get pretty battered during the legislative session, and this is really their night. We're celebrating all the hard work that they do, and if you guys could stand up and just wave and let everyone see you. I really do appreciate you all. I know you could be working anywhere else across the state, and the citizens are really lucky to have you. I think this has been a testament to the hard work that the commission has done throughout the last 60 years, the work that we will continue to do. We have partners across the state. We've had an outstanding panel. I see our friends from Memphis City government in the audience, and they told me they drove up just the moment before we started, and they're driving back tonight. And it truly warms my heart to be tasked with this assignment and see so much support across the state for the work that we do. I hope that everyone will continue to support this work, whether it's the Human Rights Commission or in your local communities, your churches, your schools. All of us have a particular talent. We can all do work in our communities. It doesn't have to be on a statewide level or a national level. And I just really appreciate you guys for being here this evening. Join us again in just celebrating this state's legacy and progress towards civil rights for everyone. And as we leave here tonight, let's commit to continue to progress in the next 60 years. As we close this evening, we have one more special delight. Please welcome, before I introduce the next portion, I think there may be some food and some beverages left. Please, if you need to catch up or speak to friends before you get on the road, there'll be music for just a little while longer. But at this time, please help me welcome Nashville Youth Poet Jadyn Marshall for a special performance.
My mother drowned me in books. She fueled my love to write and read. See, her aspirations for me included best-selling author or the next Dr. Reed. She placed in my hands the knowledge she knew in the near future I would need. For a child is but the byproduct of what their environment force feeds. While my mother was steadily sewing together my dreams, school was unraveling them every day, bit by bit from the seams. Books became a defendant on trial, the plaintiff our very state, pulling them off our library shelves, leaving only open wounds in their wake, where color turns into white guilt and rainbows flood their pearly gates. They ask why the caged bird sings, but how else do children express their pain? In history class, we will learn about America's founding fathers, learn about child labor, the traditional wife, and the drunk, abusive father, but watch as they silence the strange fruit swaying in the trees. Cast down the gavel upon the fatherless homes created by their own democracy, a witch hunt on our literature and history. This must be what they call the American dream, where school bathrooms become trap houses, where kids hide away to blow away their anxiety. Bathroom stall door become every young girl's diary, tallying down the scars that she wished she could erase. They're all counting down the days till their release date. Can you hear it? The dragging of the feet, slumped over backs bearing the weight that a bright future brings. The invisible chains wrapped around their necks. How can you not see the dark cloud hovering over your own children's heads? It's in the echo that ricochets fear through every warm body. Who knew the dropping of a pin could cause a whole room to go silent? Silence will be the first lesson that they will teach us. A quiet child is well-behaved. Well-behaved children get good grades, must listen and obey. In this place, your voice is a right that you not get to partake in. You see, your freedom of speech may come first, but the biggest lesson you will learn here is that the second matters more than the first. Watch as they let the right to bear arms begin to bear its arms around you. Point its double barrel down your hallway and shatter all sense of safety that surrounds you. Turning our classrooms into battlefields and each other into foot soldiers. These must be the aspirations that our state must want its children to shoulder. You see, we look to ban books instead of teaching kids to read. Focus on arming our teachers rather than aiming our children in the right direction to succeed. Mother Tennessee, you're overprotective of your children, not realizing that you're the reason we can't breathe. You see, my mother drowned me in books. She fueled my love to write and read, placing hope in one hand, and in the other her faith in me that she knew I would need. A bright future's what she wanted for me, where books become ships sailing into new worlds, throwing its passengers' reflections into its own words. Classroom turned into community, every voice be valued and shared, a place that harbors unity and light, no longer darkness and fear. And teachers teach about defending one another, instead of becoming our first line of defense. See, this be the dream that my mother handcrafted and passed down to me. For she understood, a child is but the byproduct of what their environment force feeds, of our aspirations and dreams. Thank you.
Yes, give Jadyn another great big round of applause. Awesome. Our future definitely is bright. Thank all of you all for attending this evening. For those of you who are watching on the live stream from all 95 counties, we say thank you. Congratulations again to the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. Give them one more great big round of applause. It has been a pleasure serving as your master of ceremonies. Be safe whether you're going around the corner or back to Memphis or Knoxville. Be safe, everybody, and God bless.